For children of the 1970s, Saturday morning television was the highlight of every week. And for much of that time, it was ruled by Sid and Marty Krofft, also known as the Krofft brothers. Their experience and entertainment goes back to Vaudeville, and after helping with character design for the Hanna-Barbera series Banana Splits in the 1960s, they decided to put their own personal stamp on kids' TV. And what a warped, crazy-ass stamp it was! Completely in tune with the times, the brothers made this brand of off-kilter psychedelic weirdness that was all 70s, but cast a long shadow over children's entertainment. So today, we're going over 8 insane kid shows from the masters of 70s weirdness.
HR Pufnstuf. This series debuting in 1969 was HR Pufnstuf. The premise, which is explained completely in this absurdly long theme song, is as follows. Young Jimmy and his friend, a magical talking flute named Freddy for whatever reason, are whisked away on a boat owned by a witch to Living Island, where everything is, as you guessed it, living.
Look, Freddy, an Indian tree.
That right, Paleface. They not call me Redwood for nothing.
The witch tries to kidnap the boy, but is thwarted by the mayor of Living Island, a talking dragon-like thing named HR Pufnstuf. He takes the boy in, since his cave is, for whatever reason, the only place where the witch's magic won't work. And in each episode, Jimmy is either trying to get home or avoid being kidnapped by a witch. Now, I know what you're thinking. This plot sounds and show looks like the result of repeated run-ins with roughly all the drugs, which is going to be a reoccurring theme on this list, but I mean, I can't tell you if it's acid or LSD that produced this show. Hell, the main character's name is even pronounced Pufnstuf. As you might imagine, this was noticed and pointed out rather quickly, and rightly so, but both brothers always insisted that drugs played no part in their creations and that they are simply weird people. And I can tell you that I'm a weird person. I would never make anything like this. But fair enough, let's just say that they're weird people. But looking at the surreal world that they created in the late 60s, we're gonna have to go ahead and say that the chances are that there were no drugs involved in this were slim to none.
The Bugaloos?
The following year, in 1970, the brothers put together their follow-up series, The Boogaloos. The series featured a group of musical British teenagers and was touted as the British version of the popular American sitcom The Monkees. However, since this was the Kroffts, the Boogaloos couldn't just be any regular musical teenagers. No, they had to be actual bugs, decked out in wings and antennae, who lived in Tranquility Forest and are constantly being harassed by, wait for it, an evil witch by the name of Benita Bazaar, who lives in a giant jukebox and has 2 anthropomorphic speakers named Woofer and Tweeter for henchmen. The show took its musical aspects seriously and enlisted Norman Gimbel and Charles Fox, writers of the hit song Killing Me Softly with his song, as well as TV themes for Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, and Wonder Woman. A freaking album was even released, which unfortunately peaked at number 118 on Billboard charts. And the music is considered to be of high quality for a children's show.
Can it be? Can we fly?
Like Pufnstuf, the Boogaloos only lasted for 1 season, but both shows continued to be aired throughout the 1970s, along with one other notable series which we'll be getting to in a little bit. But for now, these 2 shows were kinda just like warm-ups for the Kroffts' virtual takeover of Saturday mornings, which would last for 2 glorious years between 1976 and 78, in the form of the Krofft Super Show.
Electra Woman and Dyna Girl. Hosted by a manufactured band, Captain Cool and the Kongs. Are you telling me that their initials are KKK? The Krofft Super Show was their brothers' chance to throw all manner of crazy shit at the wall in order to see what stuck. And in its brief run, it gave us some of the most delightfully insane children's programming ever. One of its first and most popular segments gave us the adventures of the most awesome superhero team 1976 had to offer, Electra Woman and Dyna Girl. Essentially, an homage to, or a parody of, Batman and Robin, depending on how you look at it. Lori and Judy are two ordinary girls who moonlight as high-tech cape superheroes. Each writes for a magazine hiding the life that she leads, which the ultra-funky theme song helpfully informs us using those exact words. And they have an underground base beneath their home, which is permanently staffed by Frank. Frank. How do I describe Frank? Frank is just some guy who is somehow qualified to run the most powerful crime-solving computer ever built. How did he become qualified? I don't know. How did Lori and Judy become superheroes? I don't know. Show never explained it. And to be honest, no one really ever asked until now. Lots of comic mileage is gotten out of the characters adding the Electra or Dyna prefix to any word that they possibly can. Our heroes are summoned to the Electra base by the Electracoms they wear, which, once again, is verbatim quote from the theme song, and the Dyna girl, in particular, can't go 30 seconds without declaring something Electra-fantastic.
Electra, wow! What Electra nerve! One Electra theme coming up!
Electra no budget, because this show had none of that. That's right, this is another show from the 1970s that had low budget. Very little special effects, and the special effects that were there really made Captain Bible, of all things, look like something that Michael Bay produced.
Wonderbug. Debuting alongside the gender-flipped Caped Crusader in 1976 was Wonderbug, which was an obvious attempt to cash in on the Herbie the Love Bug series of films about a sentient VW bug. Wonderbug was not actually a bug, however, he looked more like a dune buggy, and I guess Wonderbuggy just sounded a bit too stupid. At any rate, the premise involves a group of teenagers, normal teenagers, not bugs, discovering a broken down car in a junkyard. When a magic horn is sounded, a magical and very cheap looking transformation takes place, and the car becomes Wonderbug, a talking vehicle that can drive itself, which isn't really that impressive considering that it could fly. Every week, Wonderbug would help his teen friends catch criminals and villains and right wrongs. The show never did capitalize on the potential creepy factor of a sentient talking car, but its cheap special effects and silly premise were enough to keep kids entertained.
Dr. Shrinker, the final segment to debut during the first season of the Krofft Super Show, and one of the most overtly scary elements was Dr. Shrinker. It's the tale of three teenagers, you may see a theme developing here by the way, whose planes crash on an island populated only by a mad scientist and his dim-witted assistant, played by veteran actor Billy Bartley, who appeared in a lot of Krofft's work. The mad scientist, Dr. Shrinker, was the inventor of a ray that could shrink anything down to tiny size. It's unclear whether he developed the name Dr. Shrinker after developing this technology, or if it was his real name and he figured it was his destiny to create a shrink ray. Once again, the show didn't tell, we didn't ask. Each episode's pilot was virtually identical, as the good doctor shrinks our heroes in the first episodes, and spends the rest of their series trying to catch them in order to prove that his shrink ray in fact does work somehow, I guess, whatever. Why he couldn't just shrink something else, however, is unclear and attributed to the insanity that the 1970s were. The doctor himself even complains about this at one point, saying, "I chase these shrinkies, I catch the shrinkies, the shrinkies escape, it's a vicious cycle and it's driving me mad!" Yes, I am narrating this right now. That's okay. It's not like my career's already in the toilet.
Magic Mongo. Dr. Shrinker and Electra Woman and Dyna Girl were dropped at the beginning of the Krofft Super Show's second season and replaced with two new segments. The slightly less batshit of the two, Magic Mongo, is the story of three teenagers, no, not the same three, just three more freaking teenagers, who discover a magic bottle on a beach. Out of the bottle pops Mongo, a goofy looking genie in a Hawaiian shirt who can literally manipulate reality and is bound to do the bidding of these three kids. That almost sounds like a pretty good horror movie. Most who remember Magic Mongo do so because of the way the genie performed his magic. by making a weird face and doing a strange thing with his ears that children found to be really comical or really disturbing, depending on the child. There was not a lot of variation in the plot here either, with Mongo constantly bailing the teens out of some problem by tweaking his ears and magically fixing it.
Mongo, do you think you can help Hooli get started on his vacation?
Hey, no problem.
I don't know what the fuck just happened, but I don't really care. I'ma get the fuck up out of here. Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Mongo, I'm into the airport, not Hawaii.
Look on the bright side, Master. My way, he saves plane fare.
That's our Mongo!
Bigfoot and Wildboy. Ah, Bigfoot and Wildboy, the Super Show's other second season replacement series, was apparently a serious stab at legitimate action. Its splendidly ridiculous premise is best summed up by the show's epic opening narration. Out of the mountains of the great Northwest comes the legendary Bigfoot, who, 8 years ago, saved a young child lost in the vast wilderness and raised that child until he grew up to be Wildboy. In the name of Michael from Microsoft Technical Support, where do we begin? Besides the jarring fact that Bigfoot and Wildboy both speak perfect English and the bargain basement acting props, the way that Bigfoot is shot while action is constant and hilarious, while running or jumping, he's always in slow motion with an obtrusive winding up sound effect to let you know that he's actually going really fast. His Steve Austin-like super jumps, which are obviously being made by a terrified stuntman, whose tennis shoes can be plainly seen in some shots. Its ridiculous premise wasn't necessarily out of the place on the Krofft Super Show, but in 1979, Bigfoot and Wildboy was actually picked up for a series by ABC, and it aired 12 of its own 30-minute episodes of all things. And as the 70s came to a close, so did the Krofft brothers' particular band of Saturday morning insanity. You may have noticed, however, that we still have one entry on this list. And I gotta let you know right now, raise your bongs, get your dabs, smoke that LSD or whatever you do with it, prepare for number one.
Lidsville. Ah, fuck. In 1973 and 74, the Krofft brothers produced Sigmund and the Sea Monsters and Land of the Lost, two shows that are weird as hell in their own right, but are much more well known than the shows on this list. However, in between these and their earlier successes, they tweaked and refined their HR Pufnstuf formula to arrive at perhaps the pinnacle of their supposedly not drugged madness, Lidsville. Like Pufnstuf, Lidsville has a feature-length theme song that explains its premise in excruciating detail. After seeing a magic show, a boy named Mark falls into the magician's hat and falls into a world of psychotic puppets and talking hats, hence Lidsville. Also like Pufnstuf, Mark spends the entire series trying to get home, though there is a distinct final episode in which he decides not to, which is a little unsettling. The evil magician terrorizes the poor hats, zapping them with bolts of magic and demanding that they pay their hat checks. I'd like to remind you that Marty Krofft himself once said, and I quote, "No drugs involved. You can't do drugs when you're making shows. Maybe after, but not during. We're bizarre. That's all." Maybe after, but not during. Right. Here's an interesting bit of 1970s trivia. In the early part of the decade, an ounce of marijuana was sometimes measured by filling in a shoebox lid, in the absence of a scale. Therefore, an ounce of marijuana in the 1970s was often informally referred to as a lid. Lid. We'll let you draw your own conclusion as to what this might say about the show and the Krofft brothers.